Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning. I am so glad to have you joining me today. Today's episode is for every parent who has ever sat in an IEP meeting feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, or quietly wondering, am I missing something? And am I doing enough? My guest today is Stacey Shubitz. She's an educator, parent, and author of a powerful new book, Make the School System Work for Your Child with Disabilities, Empowering Kids for the Future. In her book, she walks families through how to understand the evaluation process, how to navigate IEPs and 504 plans, how to communicate effectively with schools, and critically, how to identify your child's needs while leading with their strengths. Today, we are going to talk about the mindset shifts she encourages, what she wishes she had known earlier in her journey, and what parents most need to understand right now about navigating special education with clarity and confidence.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hi, Stacey. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here, Karen.
I'm so glad you're here. And I just want to say thank you for writing this book. I discussed your book at the beginning of the intro, and it is such a valuable resource for families. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really honored. You have great guests, and I'm really, truly honored to be one of them.
You know, when I was looking at the book, I was just thinking, and I always think about this with authors, what was the moment or a series of moments that made you realize I need to write this book for parents? Because again, it is such a valuable and needed resource.
I'm not sure that there was any one moment. However, I think it was a series of things that led to it, and over the course of many years. I remember when my daughter finished 6th grade, end of elementary school, I was like, wow, we survived that. And I was like, how did I do it? And here we go on to a new challenge. And I thought, I learned a lot and I could teach other people how to get through this time. It's a tough time when parenting is hard. Period. But it's really hard when you are navigating IEPs and therapy appointments and medical appointments. And I thought, I'd love to be able to help people with some of the knowledge that I've gleaned through the years.
Right. And you bring that experience as a mom, but also as an educator. So you bring those two worlds together, which is why I think it is so valuable, because so many parents I work with arrive at the evaluation process already emotionally exhausted. And we know that when parents have information, they can navigate the system more effectively. And I think one of the most powerful through lines in your book is the idea of identify needs and lead with strengths. I'd love for you to talk about why that framing is so important for families.
I think when I think about how I describe my children to other people, I want to describe them in a similar way. One has disabilities, the other one doesn't. They also have so many strengths. And if I'm going to lead with my son's strengths, then I better lead with my daughter's strengths. I think it's really important to explain, this is my child, and here are all the wonderful things about them. And we also deal with some challenges. And that is more than okay. But I think when we think about needs, we have to think about the fact that yes, our children have these needs and they need support, but this does not define them. This is not what they are 100% about. And so I just look at the whole person. And that's kind of why I think, and I feel really passionate about it. I could like get on the soapbox and talk about it for an hour, and I'm trying to hold myself back. But I think it's really important that like we position our kids in a way that is leading with their strengths and the positive things about them, and not just saying, I have a special needs child or my kid's disabled. That may be true. However, like, is that really your intro to
who they are? Right. Yeah. And I think from a neuropsychological standpoint, we know that strength-based framing increases engagement, motivation, and long-term self-concept in kiddos. And I think that's why I'm so excited that we've moved away, or we're moving away from a deficit-only model, because I think that just increases anxiety and learned helplessness for the parent and the child.
Yeah. And I think, you just said something that reminded me of what some therapist years ago had said, like, every time that you're, giving your child a redirection or something negative, make sure you have like 4 positives for it. I don't know what the actual ratio is, but it's like, okay, so if you are saying something about your child's deficit, then you better be adding those 4 positives as well. Like, I mean, it just makes sense. Our children are complete people, and we want them to see themselves as strong and capable. And I think kids are always watching, and they're always listening what we're doing and what we're saying as parents. And it's really important that we're using words that will help them build who they are and who you want them to grow into be.
Right. And I think that your framing just aligns beautifully with what we know about building resilience in kiddos. And so that's why I appreciate it so much. You also spend, some time discussing that disability language, person first versus identity first, and why disability itself is not a 4-letter word, because we need that term legally. If you could talk about that.
Where to start?
I know. That could be a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah. When I think about disability in the old sense of the word, it's that very ableist view of disability. And that's just what society was in the 80s, the 90s when I grew up. And I'm sure before that, or I know before that it was as well. And I think that when you realize that disability and claiming that word matters, it's going to help you access the things that your child needs. And I think it's a real aha moment for some people when they realize, if I say that my child has a disability, I can get medical assistance. If I say that they have a disability, I can get support services. Fill in the blank. The word disability, I think, is often not used. It's the D word, which, it's not a 4-letter word, but I think in the past, it hasn't been used because we don't want to offend. And the disability community has really reclaimed that word for many reasons that, I don't want to go into all of them, but it is a word that is not a bad word. There is pride attached to it. There's a Disability Pride Month. And it really does help our kids to say, yes, they have a disability, because in schools, that's going to get them what they need.
Yes. And I think that's what I so appreciated about you mentioning that, because especially since we're moving towards a more neurodiversity affirming framework, but you link disability directly to access, which is so important for parents to realize when they're navigating systems. Because clinically and legally, the word disability is not a label of limitation. It's a gateway to services, protections, and funding, which is so important for so many parents because they need it to navigate these systems that we work in.
They do. And when I heard you say that, I'm thinking, okay, this is why our kids need to know what their goals are, what their services are, what they're entitled to, because if they aren't receiving them, they have special rights. And they need to know their rights as long as they are able to. I mean, the best thing you can do is make sure that your kid knows what they're supposed to be getting so that they actually get it. I mean, I hate to say it, but as a teacher, I know there are times that students did not get picked up for speech, OT, reading, social work, whatever it is. I kept an eye on it as a teacher and I dealt with it. But, those were in the days that I had the bandwidth to do that. And not every teacher has the bandwidth to stay on top of that. They shouldn't have to. And neither should your kid. But if your kid knows that they have these rights and they come to you and say, "Oh, I haven't seen my reading teacher all week, but I know she's in the school," that's a question as a parent, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yes. And that's so important because, so many parents want to shield their kids from their learning profile because of stigma, because of fear, because maybe they won't try as hard if they believe that, they're limited in some way. So I love that you mentioned that it's important for kids to know what services they should be getting.
Yeah, it really does matter. It makes a difference. And I will tell you that now that my daughter is in high school, she knows what her accommodations are. And if they are not being fulfilled, she has learned to advocate for them. And if there's still a problem, which usually there isn't, because we've been really fortunate with where we are and the teachers that we've had. But if it's a problem, she comes home and she tells me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been years of practice.
Right. Right. And that just speaks to the idea this is not one conversation you're going to have with your child. Like you said, it's years of practice. There are numerous conversations that you are having along the way.
Right. I mean, you don't sit down with your child and say, "Hey, you have autism. This is what it means." And then you never speak about it again. It needs to be part of your family life. You need to know, does your child say, "I have autism," or "Am I autistic?" I mean, that's a conversation. There are so many conversations that have to be had.
Yes, 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 yes. One of the other things that you mentioned as we're talking about kind of IEPs, parents often don't know when it's time to insist that they try something else. When that tier is not working, when do they request a full evaluation?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a case-by-case basis. I think it really matters that you're staying on top of it as a parent. If you find out your child is going to receive small group support, that's great. How many days a week? Show me the data. Are they making progress? If they're not making progress, let's not wait this out the whole year. I know that in some places, I've talked with many, many parents and many, many teachers. In some places, the goal is just to stretch it out as long as possible. And as a parent, you have to be the squeaky wheel. And if you're feeling like there's more to your child's situation and they're not making progress, it is up to you to say, "I think it's time for an evaluation."
Yes, yes. And I think a lot of parents don't know, or maybe they're not getting the data that you mentioned. So they don't know if they should continue with tiered interventions or not, right?
If they're not getting the data, I think they need to ask for the data. This shouldn't be guarded in a vault. This is about your child. And obviously you can't ask to go in and meet with the teacher every week, but you do have the right to know what's going on with your kid.
Yes, yes. And that data, I think parents need to figure out how to access that data and when to check in on whether or not there is improvement, because oftentimes parents may not know how long it takes. They don't know if they should see improvement in 3 months, 6 months, or like you're saying, a whole academic year. And some families that I've spoken to often feel like they're left out of that process in terms of getting information about the data and then the next decision about whether to continue with the tiered interventions or to do a full special education evaluation.
My hot take is to push for the evaluation.
Yes, I agree with you.
There's only so long that you can keep going with PBIS, RTI, MTSS, whatever acronym your school district uses. There's only so long that you can keep doing that. Like, be the squeaky wheel. I know I just said that, but like, you have to be the squeaky wheel. This is your kid. And I mean, we could sit here and hope for the best and like try and wait it out another marking period. But I don't know, maybe I'm just pushy. I think you really have to push.
I think pushiness is good because, I mean, your kids are here for a limited amount of time in the educational system, right? In either elementary school, middle school, high school, and their brains are developing. And we want to be able to capitalize on the fact that when they're younger, their brains have the biggest ability to change, adapt, and reorganize to become more efficient. And waiting just never made sense to me. Why you would wait and wait too long, rather. I can understand waiting and observing for a short period of time, but when a year goes by, 2 years go by, that just, you're doing kids a disservice when that happens.
Right. The amount of remediation that has to happen when you have waited that long is enormous. And kids don't feel good when they are really behind their peers. It feels awful. So I'm from that school of thought that says, ask for the evaluation, ask for a meeting. If you're afraid to ask for the evaluation, ask for a meeting. But I would not be afraid to ask for what you think your child needs. Not for what you want, what your child needs.
Yes, I love that. Speaking of meetings, IEP meetings can feel really intimidating to parents, and you've been through it. From your perspective, what makes the biggest difference, whether these meetings feel collaborative versus adversarial?
Cookies.
Having cookies at the meeting or bringing cookies to the meeting.
I'm not trying to be like flippant. I'm really being serious. There have been years that I have brought baked goods. There have been years that I've brought donuts, and then there have been times that I've brought nothing. And I feel like when people are eating together, it makes it more, it's just nicer. I mean, like, people are happier if they've got a cookie and their stomach is not growling. So, I mean, do I do that for every meeting? No, I do not. But for that annual meeting, I see nothing wrong with bringing baked goods in. I'm a baker. I feed people. Like, I love to feed people and bake. So I think cookies, they're not that messy, and you can bring people together around a chocolate chip cookie.
Yes.
So what else makes them work? Okay, besides cookies. I think that when you go in and you see this group of people around the table, it can feel really intimidating. They're going to go around like whip style, telling you their name, their role, and it can feel really hard to keep up. If you don't remember who the third person on the right is, ask them again. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Can you tell me again? What's your role? I think knowing the players in the room really matters. I think that it can be more collegial when the school officials are speaking in terms that are not jargony. Because when acronyms are used and jargon is used, parents get lost. I don't always get lost because I've lived and breathed this world for over 20 years, but other people get really lost. You need to help them understand. And I mean, I have seen really great IEP meetings as a parent, and I've sat through not so great IEP meetings as a parent. I really feel like the ones that have gone well are with the people who want to make sure that I understand what they're telling me about my kid.
I think that those are really important points because, again, just coming into a room as a parent and seeing these sometimes 4, 5, 6 people, at a table can feel intimidating in and of itself. And then there's this power dynamic too. This seems to play a major role here, where the parents feel like they don't have the power that they should to be able to advocate for their child, which is where I think preparation and documentation come into play as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, having your ducks in a row, so to speak, really matters. Coming in, having copies of any reports that have been done on your child, important neuropsych evaluation information, any type of educational testing, whatever it is, bring that to the meeting if it's relevant and make sure that it's disseminated. Likewise, whoever is running that IEP meeting should have sent you documents, material ahead of time. One of my pet peeves is when it's sent like 40 minutes before the meeting. I'm like, I didn't have time to print this. Like, are you kidding me? Like, yes, I have my device with me, but I haven't had time to review it. So I think we have to almost call that out because it's not respectful. And that's where that power dynamic comes into play, because it's like, well, how do I call that out? I mean, in the past, when I have worked with people who haven't sent me things on time, I have said I really require 48 hours in order to look through everything that you're sending me. I have 2 children and I have a career. I don't say that part because I think that ticks people off, but I have 2 children. My time is limited. And therefore, I really need to know that like I will have a couple nights to look through all of this data or this huge IEP that seems to be growing with every passing year. Whatever it is, ask for it in advance. I think that helps with the power dynamic. And it also sets the expectation that if it's not done, you can say the next time, I asked you for this, I needed it, or even preemptively, if you haven't gotten it 48 hours before, sending an email at hour 47 saying, when can I expect this? I really need it. I need the time to look it over.
Right. And like you said, it's respectful.
It is respectful.
Yes.
It is respecting other people's time. And most educators I have worked with have been respectful and have followed the rules and have made it easier for me as a parent to understand the full picture before I walk in that meeting.
Right. And you should have the full picture. You should have time to review documents, to make your own notes, to generate questions, because then you walk into that meeting with confidence and it's and more empowered to be able to advocate for your child.
Absolutely. I have walked in with a printed IEP and sticky notes on different pages. I mean, we can have a conversation if I've had the chance to look it over and really digest what's there. And everyone deserves that. It is also your right to get those documents ahead of time.
You devote an entire chapter to communication with teachers and school staff. What are the most common communication breakdowns that you see?
Let me start by saying I haven't always gotten it right. And so I can look back on my own communication and realize when it didn't go right. And one way that I think a breakdown can happen very quickly is if you're just piling in too much information and giving your analysis of the information as a parent. As a parent, we're the emotional ones. I know from my teaching background that when I communicated with parents, I needed to have anecdotal notes and speak anecdotally, like, this is what happened in class today. Here is what happened. I'm laying it out for you. It was concerning because as a parent, if you want the teacher to respond quickly, I think taking some of the emotion out of it really matters. I have been known to say to my husband, can you nicen this up for me? Or take a little of me out of it. I don't want to seem emotional. And he's very good at doing that. And I think everyone needs a revision partner who can do that for them. So if you don't have that revision partner, or you just know that sometimes your communication hasn't gone right before, I think approaching teachers with curiosity really matters. And approaching with curiosity is kind of like that anecdotal stuff. It's kind of like, my child told me da da da. Is that right? Or my child is feeling da 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 and they're doing do 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 at home. Can you tell me what school looked like for them today? Just be curious about what's going on. I really think that if you haven't heard it with your own two ears, don't accuse someone of something. And kids sometimes don't report accurately. I have a friend whose son came home and told her something egregious that happened in class. And of course, she came to me and she's like, what do I do? And I'm like, okay, don't accuse the teacher. Like, just like ask what happened. Ask what happened. Her child made up the whole thing.
Oh my goodness.
Like, and there was no like real good reason for it, but kids will sometimes invent stories and we don't want that to happen. They might embellish the truth. Yeah. And, we have to remember that kids are kids. And I mean, with my own kids, I'm like, okay, do I use up my parental capital on this? How important is this? Do you want me to bring this to your teacher? And like, my son will often say to me, like, you don't need to bring that to my teacher. Like, if it happens again, then maybe. But you know, I think my kids have learned by me saying, like, I need to make sure this is accurate because I'm going to report what you said and ask if it's true. I don't want to be stuck telling a tall tale. And so, I mean, if your child is verbal and is able to communicate with you verbally, get the information. If there is another way you communicate with your child because they are non-speaking, you can use those nonverbal cues that you probably use all the time to figure out like what's going wrong. Just reaching out to the teacher and saying, these are the things I'm noticing my child doing at home. Can you tell me how their day went? Or did anything happen that was troubling to them? Just start there.
Yes. And I love that idea of, leading with curiosity and that two-way communication, right? It's not just getting information, it's sharing information as well. And it's back and forth. And what's interesting is that the research on family school partnerships consistently shows that clarity and consistency of communication between the school and the family actually predicts better outcomes than interventions. And so that communication is so important between the school and the family.
It really is. I'm just going to share a personal story that happened with me last year. I was going through breast cancer treatment, surgery, chemo, and I was very upfront with my son's teacher and my daughter's IEP team. And that IEP team rallied around my daughter last year. They were phenomenal. And I mean, we're talking about 8th grade. She had a bunch of different teachers. She would have a teacher from, like I think it was her music teacher who came over to her after she didn't even have her in class that marking period and said, I know your mom just had surgery. Like, how did everything go? How are you feeling? I mean, unbelievable, right? I was clear. I was very upfront. I shared probably more information than I needed to, but my kids were so loved and supported when I went through that. I knew they were going to be okay at school. And so, I mean, anytime that you can just be honest about what's happening in your home life, any type of struggles that you're having, I think not hiding things matters. Like it really is important to be open and telling teachers what's going on, because that's the way they rally around your kid.
Right. And by you sharing that information, that personal information, it's an opportunity for the school to, like you said, rally around your kid, but provide that additional social and emotional support that they might need during this time.
Yes. And they did that, and they were incredibly supported.
I'm so glad that you had that experience.
Yeah. I kept saying, if I have to go through this, this was the team of teachers to go through it with, because they loved my kids.
Yes. And it's so wonderful when you have that relationship with teachers and you feel that way about them, because you know that they have your kids' best interests. And most teachers do, right?
Yes, they really do. They really do. I think we hear about the bad apples, so to speak. I will go into comment sections on internet groups and look at, the teacher bashing going on. And I'm just, it's cringy, because I'm like, really? Like, I've worked with teachers around the country as a literacy consultant. And I will tell you, teachers are really lovely people. Like they work so hard. They want to do right by your kids. Of course, not everyone went into teaching for the right reasons. And some people just shouldn't be in the classroom. But that's such a small number of people. Like, I think it's really important to just go in and assume positive intentions. Because when we assume positive intentions, we are leading with the fact that, like, these are good people and they're going to try and do right by us.
Right. They want to support my child.
Mm-hmm. Going in with a chip on your shoulder does nobody any good. Not you, not your kid, not the teacher.
If you could go back and sit beside yourself during your child's early and elementary years, as you're preparing for that first IEP meeting, or you're thinking about whether or not this is something you want to pursue, what do you wish you had known at the very beginning?
I wish I had known that I should really read the procedural safeguards book. Every state has procedural safeguards, and they are presented to you at every single IEP meeting that you're going to go to. And they're going to be shoved across the table. They're going to be slapped in front of you. They're going to be emailed to you. They're going to be handed nicely to you. It doesn't matter, but you're going to get them. And you actually should read them. I know that this sounds like ridiculous, but like, I did not read them through until much later on. And I don't think I knew that I had the rights I had, because I didn't open that book because it was boring. And I'm like ashamed to admit this, but like, that was a real faux pas. And if I could go back, I would say, read that book, because that is going to give you information about the timelines, how quickly like evaluations are supposed to be done, when the paperwork's supposed to be in. That's going to tell you what your rights are if you don't agree with something. That's going to tell you how to get through mediation, due process, file state complaint. Like, read the procedural safeguards. Do it with your favorite cup of coffee or tea. Like, get cozy and read it. It is not a fun read, but you've got to do it. You need to know what you're entitled to.
That's great advice. Before we end this conversation, I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but I'm going to put a link to your book in the show notes, because it is such a valuable resource. Like I've been saying, I probably said a million times, but it is so important for parents to have this information. There's a lot of procedures that we parents have to be aware of. There are a lot of things that they need to know in terms of how systems operate, but curating joy, let's talk about why that was an essential part of your book.
I have filled out more screeners, rating scales, questionnaires, etc., than I care to admit to. I don't want to say I've lost hours of my life to it, but it feels sometimes, or it felt like I was losing hours of my life to it. The emails, the communication, it is exhausting. And if you're focusing on the positive, it is exhausting. And if you're focusing on the negative all the time and you're not looking for the positive things, I mean, it's going to be soul crushing. And I think I talk about Catherine Center's book really changing me and realizing that like curating joy on purpose has to happen. Like you need to make the space for it. So the reason that I have a whole chapter on it is because I realize that if I am not intentional about curating joy in my own life, I get ticked off and I get agitated. I'm shorter with my kids. I'm shorter with my parents, my husband. Like I am not my best self when I'm not looking for things that are joyful or joy spotting, as I like to say it. And so I want to be intentional by giving parents the opportunity to curate joy at the end of every chapter in that book. And then there's a whole chapter on joy and ways to create joyful times with your kids after school, on the weekends, during spring breaks or winter recesses, and during the summertime. It focuses on play. It focuses on being outside. There are just so many aspects to it. And I'm really hoping that there's something for everyone in that chapter and that they leave feeling like, okay, I am going to do things that are joyful because that's going to just make everyone happier. And it's going to make me happier. And sometimes someone will say to me, like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm content. And I think content is good because like I can be joyful and I can be content. I'm not always happy, but being content is good. And so I actively look for ways to just spot joy, look at things with a writer's eye or a poet's eye every day. That's because that's my, original field. And I just try and look for the good.
Yes. I mean, joy is a legitimate intervention. It regulates the stress response and it's not indulgent. And so I love that it's incorporated in your book and you devote a whole chapter to it.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you say that. That was like, something I was a little bit nervous about. It was like, do I really put a whole chapter in on this?
We
and
went
then I was
there.
like,
I'm glad you did.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Stacey, this has been such an important conversation. I appreciate all the work that you've done in this space. I appreciate you supporting parents because, again, this process can be so overwhelming, feel so overwhelming. And I think that this book helps them to reclaim their confidence. So thank you again for writing it. I'm going to put a link to your book in the show notes so listeners can know where to get it. If people have questions for you, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
The best way is to email me. And my email address is Stacey@StaceyShubitz.com. I'm sure that you're going to have my name spelled out and you could put that in the show notes. So that way someone can contact me that way. I have a site devoted to the teaching of writing called Two Writing Teachers, and there's a podcast. So if you're an educator listening, check that out. Otherwise, you can also check out my brand new Substack that I started with the intent to help people with advocacy on a regular basis. And that's just staceyshubitz.substack.com.
Wonderful. And I will put links to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining our conversation. For families listening, Stacey's book, Make the School System Work for Your Child with Disabilities, is a practical roadmap through evaluations, IEPs, communication with schools, and self-advocacy. And it's grounded in both expertise and lived experience. Be sure to check out the show notes for all of the information about where you can access the book and how to connect with Stacey. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.